Good evening, everyone, and welcome to COVID 24. I have dropped the COVID Chronicles. The name was just becoming a little bit too much of a mouthful. And when I had originally come up with it, I didn't think this was going to be an ongoing thing. I thought maybe 10 days, maybe a little over a week at the most, maybe 2 weeks at the absolute most, but we may be going longer. So I'm just going to go with COVID now. This is COVID 24 for the evening of March 30th, 2020. And we have a good show for you guys tonight. We have a special guest, Lindsay Martens. Lindsay is both a lab technician and a bikini fitness competitor. Pretty good, right? So we're going to see just what sort of things she's observed, where she lives, and her working environment, her training environment, and those sort of things. But first, I am going to take a hit of our generous sponsor. Holy shit, I'm down to 2 capsules. I don't know how the hell that happened. So I may go off half cocked tonight. Oh, I may go off half cocked tonight. I always try to go off fully cocked, but obviously that is not possible tonight. So before we get to our updates, I am going to do some shout outs. Shout out to Lindsay. I hope you're watching, Lindsay. If you're on the show, you should be watching. Grace, Don Buckler, Kim, Tammy, Jixer, Terry McLean, Angie, my gray-haired old daddy. He's barred from the casinos, as is everyone else. And hopefully he's figured out YouTube and he's watching. Tanya, Sandy, Rick and Rhonda, Julia Wolf, special friend of the show, Lisa, Charlene and Dwayne, our producer, Dave Darnley, who will be joining us later in the show. Producer Dave will be joining us. So in case you guys thought he was a fake person, you're wrong. He's a real person. And a special shout out to Micro Duck Dong and Tim. Micro Duck Dong sometimes puts crude comments in the comment section, but that's okay. That's okay. We're not going to censor him. We're not going to ban him. We're not going to do any of that stuff. And a big shout out, of course, to my sponsor, Athletic Alliance Nutritional Supplements. They are helping me get through this. I'm loading up on protein. I'm using the pre-workout for exercise. And of course, I am doing meetings and presentations and COVID casts under the influence of the advanced nootropic. Available. Jesus, this background is not working well. It's available right across North America at GNC. And there are probably 50% of the GNCs are open. Supplements have been designated as an essential service, so many of them have stayed open. And their brave employees are continuing to work, and they're offering curbside service. So you can pick it up at any GNC across North America or at gnc.com, or you can pick it up at svn.com and Body Energy and some other select locations, or just visit athleticalliance.net. So let's have a quick word from our sponsor. And we're back. All right. So, what is happening in the world of coronavirus? Does anybody remember the good old days when Corona meant beer? I do. The good old days, or February, as we often call it. Whoa, what's going on here? What's going on here? Oh, here we go. All right. So the United States is at 162,665 cases, 500 deaths overnight, to add to a total of 3,126 deaths. And we continue to see New York as the epicenter. 1,300 total deaths, 279 last night. So that number is still increasing at a very rapid rate, nearly 20%. So this should double in about 4 days. So check back around April 3rd to see if this number is at 2,600. If it's at 2,600 or higher, then, they're still in a bad situation. If it's not that high, if it's fallen off, if it's, say, less than 2,400, then the rate of fatalities is slowing down, and that can be considered good news, right? Positive news, flattening of the curve, if you will. What else do we got? New Jersey, also very bad, adjacent to New York, so you would somewhat expect that. Big difference in the death rate, though, but there's also a big difference in population and confinement. Florida. Florida's not doing too badly. I mentioned earlier the governor, Ron DeSantis of Florida, had kind of taken a laissez-faire, what the hell, a herd mentality kind of approach, and just said, man, we ain't doing a damn thing. He said, you're all hiding under the bed with this COVID-19. We ain't doing a goddamn thing. Bring it on. Bring on the COVID. We'll knock it out. And so that's kind of the Floridian approach. I mean, you would expect them to be somewhat out of step with everybody, and that's kind of the way in Florida, isn't it? But you know what? They're doing fine, aren't they? To be honest. Washington has fallen way down the list in terms of cases. They're still fairly high in terms of actual deaths, but you can see the death rate has really, really slowed down. And this got in early, and it impacted the an old folks home in Bellevue, I believe, and that was sort of the epicenter, and it really got out of hand quite early on, but has since been controlled. And if you watch the earlier show today, there's a pattern that I've been observing, and I've put forth, I've sort of openly speculated on this, and you can consider it pseudoscience because I'm certainly not a doctor, and I'm certainly not a scientist. I'm just an average Joe, an average Rick, who observes patterns. And one of the patterns we're seeing is that it looks to me like there's a 2-strain variant of this virus. It looks like there's a Pacific strain that started in Asia and first hit the west coast of North America. And it looks like there's another strain that I think, and again, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I just observe things, but I think this strain may have mutated because it seems to be having a much harsher impact in Europe, particularly around the Mediterranean. Spain is very strongly affected. Italy, of course, is the epicenter. In Spain, the death rate is still well in excess of 10%. So this will double in a week, 7,000. At this rate, it will be up to 13, 14,000 if we don't see a slowing down fairly soon. So Italy, Spain, hit very hard. Portugal, not so much, but they only got their first case at the beginning of March. So if my theory does hold true, expect to see Portugal really escalating upwards. And this pattern also continues. The European Atlantic type strain has affected the East Coast a lot more. We see a lot more. We seem to see a much harsher version in the East Coast, because the West Coast, I mean, the first cases in Canada showed up in British Columbia and Washington State and California, all places on the West Coast, all have a lot of influx from Asia in the form of tourism, immigration, and whatever. So you would think that would be the epicenter, but it was quickly overtaken by places in the Atlantic, New York, New Jersey, and Quebec, right? So let's go over to Canada. British Columbia approaching 1,000 cases. And I mentioned on the earlier show today that approximately 250,000 people across Canada have been tested. So um, the highest rate of positive tests that we've seen so far is coming out of Alberta, and it's about 1%. 1% of people tested have the coronavirus. They've only had 3 deaths, though. BC is at 19 deaths, but that's held fairly consistent. One thing we're watching in BC is the early epicenter, which was the Lynn Valley. I think it's the Lynn Valley Care Home, but some old folks' home in Lynn Valley. They are using hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine. That's the drug used for malaria, and there's been some positive results. Some early positive indicators that it may be beneficial in treating the coronavirus. And so the staff and many of the patients at that Lynn Valley Care Home are testing this out. And I guess we should check back and hopefully we hear something. I'll dig around and make sure that I get an update for that within about a week. One thing interesting to note is you often hear this 14-day incubation window, but that's at the longer end of the window. Most incubation periods for this virus have been about 5 days. So the bulk of people that have been infected, they should be showing symptoms within 5 days. And as also I mentioned earlier, I talked to a frontline worker yesterday at a grocery store, at a superstore. If you don't know what superstore is, think of Walmart on Good Friday. Think of people herding through, stampeding, carrying, racks of toilet paper. And I was talking to an employee there, and she hasn't had a single person working there that's gotten sick. So take that for what it's worth. Obviously, it's a very positive sign, right? As we continue through Canada, we see Ontario is now at 1,700 cases. Ontario is lagging a bit in their testing. Of the 4 provinces, Quebec, Ontario, Alberta, and British Columbia, Ontario has had the fewest tests. And when we talk to Lindsay is based in London, Ontario. We'll get her perspective on some of the things happening there. Quebec is now just about at 3,500 cases, which leads the country, 2,500 deaths. Interesting to see the recovery difference between Quebec and Ontario. This is a really striking number, and I'd like to get to the bottom of this. Why is it Quebec has nearly 3,500 cases and only 29 have recovered while 25 have died? And here we see in Ontario, half the cases, an equal number of deaths, and about 15 times, close to 15 times the number of recovered cases. That seems very strange to me. An anomaly like that is probably down to a classification difference. What else? 148 in Newfoundland and Labrador. That's very high. That's very surprising. Yukon 4, Northwest Territories 1, and there is still one territory. There is still one territory on the North American continent which is having none of it, and that's Nunavut. 0. So we all know where the future state is going to be. It's going to be in Nunavut. And hey, I think they got diamonds up there too, I know the Northwest Territories has diamonds, and they only got 1. So you know what? We're looking at a massive amount of territory with only 1 case. 5 if you include the Yukon. That's pretty promising. Pretty promising. Total, nearly 7,500 cases in Canada, just over 7,400, 74 deaths, and 945 recovered. So that's where we stand. And now I am going to finish my bevy, pound the rest of this, so I have the caffeine intake, the caffeine horsepower to get me through the rest of this. And I will see you guys on the other side. Either she's frozen or she's got incredible poise.
Okay. You guys are frozen for a second.
Well, I was going to say that's incredible physical control, Lindsay, if you could just hold a spot like that. Great for photos, though, right?
Pardon?
Great for photos, though, right?
Oh, professional.
Yeah. Well, listen, Lindsay, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, not a problem.
Which you work at a lab, correct?
Yes, so I work for Life Labs, and I
Right.
also as a lab technician at a hospital.
Okay. So before we get into actually what you do, the since this whole COVID thing has kind of taken over everybody's lives, has it changed your life a lot?
Oh, quite a bit. I mean, like, my routine is not even close to what it used to be. Like, with the gyms being closed and everything, like, makes it a lot tougher to actually get a workout in.
Yeah, you're a fitness competitor, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's definitely changed a lot. I mean, I at my house here, I don't really have any weights or anything really. So I've been just pumping out the band workouts and doing some cardio.
Are you going stir crazy? How many people live in your house?
Just my boyfriend and two other people, so four,
Four
including
people.
me.
Okay. And which lab you work at? Life Labs, you said. That's in
Yeah.
Toronto,
Actually, here in London.
London. Oh, okay. So you're a little bit out of the madness, a little bit, right?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay. And so what exactly do you do there? Like, have things picked up since the coronavirus really became
But it's
exploded?
actually died down quite a bit. We would usually see about like 200 people a day, and now it's kind of like down to like 50 people, if that.
Wow, really?
Yeah, but it's kind of a good thing because like people are staying in their homes where they should be and not really going out if it's not really necessary. But
Hmm.
yeah,
It sounds
all
like
good.
now might be a good time to go out and get some blood work, though, huh?
Yeah, but don't tell everybody that because then they'll all think that.
No. Well, don't worry. Our audience isn't that big. It won't change the dynamic that much.
Yeah, yeah,
So you are somewhat plugged into the industry, though, right? In
yeah.
general, like is there any sort of information that you would come across that the average person might not know?
Well, we do. Life Labs does now accept like COVID swabs and like we send those things off. Not really know. I'm not too sure if I'm allowed to say these things.
Well, we know they're going out to different labs. I don't think that's
Yeah, exactly.
anything too shocking.
Yeah.
And what's the procedure when you get a swab, a tested swab?
So actually, for work, a lot of things have changed. We now screen people before they actually come into the lab. So we have to ask them three questions. Have they traveled recently? Have they been in contact with anybody investigated for coronavirus or anything? And if they have any respiratory illness like symptoms or a fever. So once they get past that, then they can come in and yeah, we just grab their sample and send it off.
And what if they don't have any of those symptoms? Do you still test them?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so is this testing basically open to anybody, or do they have to be referred?
Oh, both for the COVID stuff. So we don't specifically do it ourselves just because it is a swab that goes, through down the nose and into the throat. So we don't do that. We are more so just blood, but our labs are now testing. So somebody would collect the swab and they would bring it into us and then we would send it off.
Okay, so at a different facility, they would do the testing there,
Yeah,
and
it's
then they would.
still like Life Labs, but we don't like ourselves take the swabs.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just kind of send them off.
And do you get any idea of what sort of number of tests are coming back positive?
No, we don't really have access to any of the results, which is probably a good thing because you never really know who's, kind of wanting to know those things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Do you have you yourself heard of anybody that's actually gotten this?
like the swabs and stuff.
No, just the coronavirus, the COVID-19.
Um, this lady that I do work with, I think she said that her son has it.
Really?
Yeah,
How old is he approximately?
I'm not 100% sure.
But we're talking like younger though, right? Like under 40.
I think he had. I think he has other issues, which makes him more immunocompromised. But
Oh, okay. Hmm.
yeah,
Okay. So in your opinion, is this being handled well? Is it under control?
that's a good question. Um, I don't think we really are ready. for this kind of, I don't know, like, I want to say that we are well prepared, but there's a lot of stuff that we don't really know about this virus.
Hmm.
And I think people, like, as long as people stay inside and, like, actually do this self isolation, I think we have a pretty good chance of, like, kind of keeping the, how they talk about flattening the curve.
Yeah.
I think we are doing a good job of that, but you never know, right?
No, I guess not. The how much longer do you expect the isolation to go on?
I want to be hopeful and say, like, I'm not too sure. Like, I hope that it's only going to be about like a month or so,
Hmm.
but I guess it all really depends on like everybody, like how everybody handles this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. The Can I ask you a few general questions about just working in a lab?
Yeah.
Just out of for my own curiosity. So, what do people get tested for the most at labs?
Um, there's like a variety of stuff because like we do everything from like checking your INR to like just routine chemistry tests and all the other types of things like hepatitis, measles, mumps, like all that stuff. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like everything.
cholesterol, probably, right?
Yeah, oh yeah,
Um,
that general stuff.
Testosterone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got my testosterone checked out at a lab here and they thought I was taking something. And I said, no, listen, that's legitimately 100% what it is. And they're like, no, 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 we think you're lying.
That's hilarious.
I offered to take a lie detector test, but no, they weren't having
Yeah, that's too funny.
it. Yeah. So your testing runs the gamut then, right?
Yeah.
And traffic is down. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
So for
Oh yeah.
you, you're one of the few Canadians that's kind of getting the best of both worlds, right? Like your workload has dropped off a bit,
Yeah,
but you're still employed.
exactly. So like we're not as exposed to a lot of people, but we are more exposed if you like to the virus, right?
Yeah, and I would guess that you have a somewhat compromised population coming in there. I mean, most would probably be fairly healthy, but you would get
It's
more older people, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the people that really need things done that come in.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what are your plans if the isolation goes on for let's say another 4 weeks? My prediction is probably between 2 and 4 weeks. I'm leaning
Hmm.
towards 4 weeks. What are
Yeah.
your plans individually?
I I agree. I think it will be around a month or so before it actually starts to slow down a little bit. But I think my routine will still kind of be the same, like what I'm doing right now, just work, work more. Um, Try to get a little bit of exercise in. Like it's good to be outside and kind of get some fresh air and, you know, just kind of taking it day by day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, thanks a lot, Lindsay.
Yeah, no problem.
You're passing on some good inside information there.
Thank you.
No worries. And now I'm just going to take a quick break,
Okay.
and then I'm going to interview you about fitness and stuff like that. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Oh yeah.
Okay. So I am here with Lindsay Martens. Lindsay, are you bikini or fitness?
I'm bikini.
Bikini. Okay. So you're in a tough situation now, right?
Yeah.
Um, Gym is closed, right?
Yes, it
Did
is.
you do any other activities, like sort of group activities or anything?
I actually am a yoga instructor. Like I went to Thailand for 2 months and I became a yoga instructor, but I haven't really been practicing all that much just because I've
Okay.
been pretty busy. But
So basically for physical activities, you're pretty well shut down from any kind of outside activities.
yes, for sure.
Okay. But I'm guessing that
Mhm.
somebody as active as you
Yeah.
would have found some sort of alternative way for staying in shape at home.
Of course I do.
Aha. So what's your home routine?
Okay, so it all kind of depends on what my work schedule is like, but I try finding about like half an hour that I'll whip up a random workout, and so I try to do something at least for 30 minutes a day.
Right. What would
Yeah.
you recommend for, let's say, women to do that are isolated, or even men for that matter, that are isolated, kind of stuck inside all day? What's something, maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 exercises that they could do daily that's, not anything too crazy, but just something to kind of keep the blood moving, sort of thing?
I would probably warm up for like with cardio for maybe like 5-10 minutes. A lot of compound movements. Like I find doing an overall like compound movement would help a lot more than just doing like certain isolated ones, just because you don't have the same access to everything. Um,
So something
so yeah,
like
just kind of
burpees then, maybe?
yeah, like something like that. Maybe like jump squats, stuff that gets your whole body moving.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And how about diet?
I feel like diet is probably a really important part right now just because you're not doing the same stuff that you used to. So it's kind of important to, you want to kind of keep track, but at the same time, you don't want to stress yourself out more and add to the whole situation, right?
Right. And I mean, all the food, all the long shelf life food it's not the healthiest stuff, is it?
No, it's not.
No, it's like spam and ramen noodles and things like that. So, I mean, is there hoarding going on where you live in London?
Yeah, well, at this house, not so much. I mean, we're not really at the point of panic right now. Like, it just kind of seems like not really like a joke, but you're not really thinking like, oh wow, I need to stock up on a ton of toilet paper, right?
You know what? Don't travel to Surrey.
Yeah.
The panic is in full swing here, whether it's
Is
warranted
it?
or not. Oh,
Like, yeah, like some of the grocery stores that you go to, like there are shelves that are completely cleared, and like it kind of does set in like a little bit of a panic, but at the same time, like why would you buy a ton of things that you're not going to really eat? Like
yeah.
I know I'm
And
not
I mean,
can't
the other
say
side of that is you don't want to be the idiot that didn't load up when you had the chance, right? Like you don't want to go back to the
exactly.
store in a week and find out everything's bare, and people are like, "Man, you had 2 weeks. Why didn't you get this stuff?"
Yeah,
And you're like,
right.
"I didn't want to panic buy."
That might be me. Yeah, see the Hydro Pro?
Yeah. There you
It's
go.
key.
Protein lasts a long time, right?
Yeah.
Got a good shelf life. It's very important in situations like this.
Exactly.
So, what
Yeah.
sort of stuff have you been eating? Uh,
I try to make sure I get all my veggies in.
yeah.
I do have my shake in the morning, which I usually put like a banana, a scoop of that Hydro Pro, and some peanut butter, obviously. And I usually keep it like pretty light, but just eat multiple times during the day.
Wow. So, a shake and some veggies? Man, you can do
Well,
this forever.
well,
You could
there's
stay in quarantine
chicken,
for
like
a year on that.
all the bodybuilding staples, like chicken. You have your rice, like that kind of stuff.
Okay, so you're still doing the chicken and the rice and some veggies and
Yeah,
a smoothie, right?
I'd be lying if I didn't sneak in some things here or there.
But pretty well normal stuff though. It sounds like
Yeah,
you haven't
just
made any quarantine type adjustments to your diet, right?
no, not a whole lot.
Okay, so life is pretty normal for you then. So do you have any competitions planned for the future that have been canceled, or any that are sort of outside of that cancellation window?
Um, I've actually kind of been thinking about this lately because I do start prep at the end of April, and well, my competition is in October. So
Mm,
originally I wasn't going to start prep until May, but my coach wants a little bit more time. So I'm supposed to start at the end of April, but we'll see how things go.
okay. Well,
Yeah,
you know what? I think we should revisit this back at the end of April and see if you're back
I
in
agree.
your normal schedule.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Well, listen, thanks a lot, Lindsay.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, that's it. Dave, do you want to sign us off?
Thanks a lot, Rick. Certainly a very eventful show. Learning some insight from both inside the lab and, of course, outside the lab. And looking forward to everybody. Stay tuned for the following show coming up.
All right. And remember, if we're all together, can nobody stand against us?